The party was in full swing, the kind of effortless gathering only my sister Charlotte could host. Laughter spilled from the open French doors of her immaculate home, mingling with the soft strains of a jazz playlist and the clinking of wine glasses. From my corner on the plush velvet sofa, I watched her move through the crowd, a radiant smile on her face. To everyone here, she was the sun around which they all orbitated. And why wouldn't she be? She had it all. The stunning house in the suburbs, the successful husband, 2 bright children who were currently with their grandparents, and a career as an interior designer that was the envy of everyone we knew. "Charlotte's just amazing, isn't she?" murmured a woman next to me, someone I vaguely recognized from a previous family event. That promotion for Ethan, the new landscaping, they're so blessed. I offered a polite smile and a nod. She's always been driven. It was the standard script at these events. People would marvel at Charlotte's perfect life, and I, the younger sister, the quiet librarian, would simply agree. It wasn't that I was jealous. Envy was too sharp an emotion for the gentle melancholy I felt. It was more a sense of detachment, as if I were watching a beautifully directed film. My own life was a quiet, single-story bungalow compared to her sprawling 2-story mansion. It was comfortable, cozy, and mine, but it lacked the grandeur that everyone seemed to admire in hers. Ethan, her husband, was holding court by the barbecue, flipping burgers with a practiced ease. He was handsome, charismatic, and always had a ready laugh. He and Charlotte were the perfect match, a power couple whose Christmas cards looked like they were lifted from a magazine catalog. He caught my eye from across the lawn and gave me a warm, familiar wink. I'd always liked Ethan. Since he married Charlotte 10 years ago, he treated me with a kindness and respect that felt genuine, never patronizing. He saw me as Megan, not just Charlotte's little sister. Later, as the evening began to wind down and the crowd thinned, I was in the kitchen, helping Charlotte gather empty plates. "Thanks for your help, Meg," she said, her voice a little tired but still bright. "You didn't have to." "What are sisters for?" I replied, stacking the dishes by the sink. It was a lovely party. Everyone had a wonderful time. "It's good to see everyone," she said, though her gaze was distant, fixed on something outside the window. A fleeting shadow crossed her face, so quick I almost missed it. But before I could ask if everything was okay, she turned back to me, her brilliant smile firmly back in place. "So, any interesting new books at the library? Anyone check out something scandalous?" We fell into easy conversation, the way we always did when it was just the two of us. We talked about my work, her latest design project, and our parents' upcoming anniversary. It was comfortable, safe territory. There were no cracks in the facade, no hints of the earthquake to come. As I was gathering my purse, ready to leave, Ethan approached me. Charlotte was busy saying goodbye to the last of the guests at the door. "Megan, can I have a word with you for a second?" he asked. His voice was low, and the easygoing charm he'd worn all evening had vanished. His face looked strained under the soft kitchen lights. "Of course, Ethan. What's up?" I said, expecting him to ask about a book recommendation or maybe my car, which had been acting up lately. He glanced over his shoulder, ensuring Charlotte was still occupied. The gesture sent a small, cold prickle of unease down my spine. He leaned in slightly, his eyes filled with a desperation I had never seen before. It was a look so out of place in this perfect house, in this perfect life, that it felt like a scene from a different movie had been spliced into ours. His next words were the ones that shattered the illusion. Not just for me, but for everyone who believed in the fairy tale. "I need your help," he whispered, his voice tight with a tension that seemed to vibrate through the air. "It's the mortgage. We're going to lose the house. And Charlotte, she can't know I'm asking you." The words hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. For a moment, my mind refused to process them. Lose the house? The foundation of Charlotte's perfect world? It seemed impossible. A line from a different, grittier story. I must have misheard. "What are you talking about, Ethan?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You just got that big promotion. Charlotte's business is taking off." A bitter, humorless laugh escaped him. "The promotion wasn't a promotion, Megan. It was a severance package. I lost my job 3 months ago." I stared at him, my heart beginning to pound against my ribs. 3 months. He had been pretending for 3 months. The barbecues, the weekend trips, the easy smiles, all of it had been a performance. "The market shifted," he continued, his gaze fixed on the pristine marble countertop, as if he couldn't bear to look at me. My entire division was made redundant. I thought I'd find something else right away, something better. I didn't want to worry Charlotte. You know how she gets when she's stressed. I wanted to protect her. Protect her. The words echoed in the cavernous, silent kitchen. He had tried to protect her by building a wall of lies, and now the wall was crumbling. So every morning, I trailed off, the image forming in my head. I'd get dressed, kiss her goodbye, and spend the day in coffee shops, applying for jobs online, trying to network, he confessed, shame coloring his every word. I kept using the credit cards, telling myself I'd pay it all off as soon as I landed the next big thing. But nothing came. The savings ran out. We were already living so close to the edge, Megan. This house, the mortgage is astronomical. The cars, the club memberships, the vacations. It's a machine that needs constant feeding. I thought of Charlotte, moving through her party with such grace, blissfully unaware that the ground beneath her feet was about to give way. I felt a surge of anger, not just at Ethan, but at the whole charade, at the pressure to maintain this illusion of effortless perfection. Why are you telling me this? Why not her? I demanded, my voice a little stronger now. She's your wife. She has a right to know. Because I'm a coward, he said, finally looking up. His eyes were red-rimmed and desperate. Because telling her means admitting I failed. It means this whole life we've built, this thing everyone admires, it's a lie. She'll look at me and she won't see the man she married. She'll see a failure. He took a shaky breath. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank has started foreclosure proceedings. We have until the end of the month to pay the arrears, or they'll officially put the house up for sale. I felt dizzy, needing to lean back against the counter for support. How much? $15,000, he said, the number landing like a physical blow. Just to stop the immediate action. It won't solve the whole problem, but it will buy us time. Time for me to come clean, for us to figure something out. $15,000. It was almost the entirety of my life's savings. The money I had meticulously put away, dollar by dollar, from my modest librarian's salary. It was my down payment fund, the seed of my own quiet, humble dream, a small cottage with a garden, a place where I didn't have to pretend. Ethan, I don't have that kind of money just lying around, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. It was a half lie. I had it, but it was everything. I know it's an insane thing to ask, he pleaded, his voice cracking. I wouldn't, but I'm desperate. I can't go to my parents. They'd be so disappointed. And Charlotte's parents, they would never let her forget it. Our friends, they're part of this world we're supposed to have conquered. You're the only one outside of it. The only one I can trust not to. He didn't have to finish. Not to judge, not to gossip, not to watch their perfect world burn with a secret sense of satisfaction. He was asking because he knew my life was different. He was leaning on the very simplicity that their friends so often overlooked. Just then, Charlotte's cheerful voice cut through the tension. There you are. I was wondering where you two had disappeared to. She walked into the kitchen, her face glowing. She looped her arm through Ethan's, pressing a kiss to his cheek. Everything okay? Ethan forced a smile that was a grotesque parody of his earlier one. Just fine, honey. Just thanking Megan for all her help tonight. I felt like a traitor. Standing in her kitchen, complicit in a secret that was aimed straight at the heart of her life. I looked at my sister, so happy and unknowing, and then at her husband, his eyes silently begging me to keep his devastating secret. The weight of it was crushing. I should get going, I said, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. It's late. Okay, sweetie. Drive safe, Charlotte said, giving me a hug. It felt different this time. Fragile, like I was holding a porcelain doll that was about to shatter. I walked out of the house, the sound of their goodbyes following me into the cool night air. The house, which had looked so grand and inviting just a few hours ago, now seemed like a hollow, ornate tomb. I got into my car, the engine rumbling to life, and as I pulled away from the curb, I saw them standing in the doorway, framed in light, the perfect couple in their perfect home. And all I could think about was the $15,000 crack in the foundation. The drive home was a blur. The familiar streets of my quiet neighborhood felt alien. The modest houses I usually found comforting now seemed to mock me. Each one represented a life of simple, achievable honesty, something that now felt a world away from my family. The conversation with Ethan played on a loop in my head, his whispered confession a venomous soundtrack to the images of Charlotte's radiant, oblivious smile. I walked into my small bungalow, the one I had been so proud of, the one whose mortgage was a manageable, predictable part of my budget. The silence inside was usually a welcome embrace after a noisy day at the library or a boisterous family gathering. Tonight it was deafening. I sank onto my own couch, a comfortable but well-worn piece of furniture, and stared at the framed photo on my mantelpiece. It was of me and Charlotte as kids, grinning gap-toothed at the camera on a family vacation. We were a team back then, an inseparable unit against the world. When did our lives diverge so drastically? When did she start living a life that required a script and an audience? For hours, I wrestled with an agonizing tangle of emotions. There was a hot, sharp anger directed at Ethan. He had been reckless and cowardly, prioritizing his pride over his partnership with his wife. He had allowed the lie to grow into a monster that was now threatening to devour them whole. Then there was a confusing wave of resentment toward Charlotte. Was she truly so blind? Or did she willfully ignore the warning signs, preferring the comfort of the illusion to the harshness of reality? How could you live with someone and not know they were drowning right beside you? But beneath the anger and the resentment, a deeper, older instinct stirred. The fierce, unwavering love I had for my sister. I thought of her not as the flawless hostess in her palace of lies, but as the girl who held my hand on the first day of school, who fiercely defended me from a playground bully, who cried with me for a week when my first pet died. Ethan's failure was his own, but the fallout would hit Charlotte the hardest. The public humiliation, the loss of her home, the shattering of the identity she had so carefully constructed. I couldn't bear the thought of it. She was my sister. And what about my dream? My cozy cottage with a garden, the symbol of my own independent, quiet success. $15,000 was the heart of that dream. Giving it away meant starting over, pushing that future further down the road, maybe indefinitely. Was I willing to sacrifice my own hard-won security to patch a hole in a life I didn't even respect? By the time the first hint of dawn painted the sky in shades of gray and lavender, I knew the answer. It wasn't a noble, heroic decision. It was a heavy, resentful one, born of love and obligation. I couldn't let my sister's world implode while I stood by with the means to prevent it, at least for a little while. I would help, not for Ethan, and not for their marriage, but for Charlotte. I would buy her time. What she and Ethan did with it was up to them. My anger had cooled into a steely resolve. I opened my laptop, my hands moving with a grim purpose. Logging into my online banking, I stared at the number in my savings account. It had taken me years to build. Years of packing my own lunch, of borrowing books instead of buying them, of choosing quiet nights in over-expensive nights out. It was a number that represented my patience, my discipline, my future. With 3 clicks, it was gone. I transferred the $15,000 to Ethan's account, the transaction confirmation page feeling like a death certificate for my dream. A wave of nausea washed over me. I closed the laptop, feeling hollowed out, as if I had given away a part of myself. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. I got it. Megan, I don't have the words. Thank you. I will pay you back every single cent, I promise. I didn't reply. His gratitude felt like salt in a wound. His promise felt as hollow as the grand foyer of his house. The money was a temporary fix, a flimsy piece of tape over a gaping crack. The real problem, the lie at the center of their marriage, remained, and now I was a part of it. Later that morning, my phone rang. It was Charlotte. My breath hitched, my hand trembling as I answered. Hey, Meg. Just wanted to say thanks again for last night, she said, her voice as breezy and cheerful as ever. I was thinking we haven't had a proper Sister's Day out in ages. Are you free for some shopping and lunch on Saturday? My treat. Shopping? The word came out flat, devoid of enthusiasm. I thought of the cavernous hole in my savings account. I pictured Charlotte browsing through expensive boutiques, blissfully unaware of the sacrifice that had just been made to keep her there. Yeah, there's a new handbag at Nordstrom I've been eyeing. It would look perfect with... I tuned her out, the irony a bitter pill in my throat. She was planning to buy a luxury handbag while I had just given up my future home to save hers. The chasm between our realities had never been wider, and it was filled with a secret that I was now bound to keep. I can't on Saturday, I said, my voice tight. I'm busy. Oh, she said, a flicker of disappointment in her voice. Okay, well, some other time then. The conversation ended quickly after that. I hung up, my chest tight with a suffocating mixture of guilt and fury. This was my new reality. Lying to my sister, avoiding her, living in the shadow of a secret that wasn't even mine. The party was over, and I was left standing in the wreckage. The next 2 weeks were a special kind of hell. I existed in a state of suspended anxiety, constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. My interactions with Charlotte were stilted and brief. I'd let her calls go to voicemail, replying hours later with short, non-committal texts. I knew I was hurting her, and the guilt was a constant, dull ache, but it was overshadowed by a simmering rage that I couldn't seem to control. Every cheerful message she sent about her perfect day, or a funny thing one of the kids said, felt like a personal insult, a testament to her ignorance of the sacrifice I had made. Ethan sent me a few texts, hollow words of gratitude coupled with vague promises of progress. Had a promising interview, one read. Working on a lead, said another. But there was no real news, and certainly no mention of him telling Charlotte the truth. I felt a growing certainty that he never would, not unless he was forced to. He had used my money to buy himself not just time, but a reprieve from consequences, and I was his unwilling accomplice. The breaking point came on a rainy Saturday afternoon. I was curled up on my sofa, trying to lose myself in a book, but the words were just black marks on a page. A sharp knock on the door made me jump. I wasn't expecting anyone. Peeking through the window, my stomach plummeted. It was Charlotte, standing on my small porch, a designer umbrella held elegantly over her head. She looked like a splash of vibrant color in my muted gray world. There was no escaping. I opened the door, plastering a weak smile on my face. "Charlotte, hey, what are you doing here?" "I'm here because my sister has apparently decided to ghost me," she said, her tone attempting to be light, but her eyes held a genuine hurt. "You've been avoiding me for 2 weeks, Megan. Are you going to tell me why?" She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, shaking her umbrella and leaving it by the door. She looked around my small living room, and for the first time I felt a defensive pang. It was my space, my humble, honest space, and her presence felt like an intrusion. "I haven't been avoiding you," I lied, my voice thin. "I've just been busy." "Busy? Too busy to take a single phone call? Too busy for a 5-minute chat?" She stood in the middle of the room, her arms crossed. "I thought we were closer than that. If I did something to upset you, you should just tell me." Her genuine concern was almost worse than her oblivious cheerfulness. It made my deception feel even more monstrous. I wanted to scream the truth at her. I wanted to shake her and tell her to wake up. "You didn't do anything," I mumbled, turning away to fuss with a stack of books on a shelf. "I'm just tired. Work has been a lot." "I don't believe you," she said, her voice soft but firm. She took a step closer. "Something is wrong. I can feel it. You were strange at the party. And ever since, it's like you're a million miles away. Talk to me, Meg. Please." I squeezed my eyes shut. I could feel my control slipping, the carefully constructed dam of silence about to burst. "You want to talk?" I said, spinning around to face her. My voice was trembling, laced with a bitterness that startled even me. "Okay, let's talk. Let's talk about your perfect life." Charlotte looked taken aback by my venomous tone. "What does my life have to do with anything?" "Everything. It has everything to do with everything." The words came spilling out, hot and uncontrolled. "You float through life in this bubble of perfection, thinking everything is just blessed and amazing, and you have no idea what's really going on, do you?" "Megan, you're not making any sense," she said, her face a mask of confusion and alarm. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you need to open your eyes. This life you're so proud of, this beautiful house, the parties, the designer handbags, it's a fantasy. It's a house of cards built on a foundation of lies." The color drained from her face. "Lies? What lies?" This was it. The moment of truth. I could tell her everything, betray Ethan's desperate confession and my own promise of silence, or I could try to pull back. But I was too far gone. The resentment had festered for too long. I took a breath, my voice dropping to a low, intense hiss. "You really want to know? Then stop asking me. Go home and ask your husband. Ask Ethan why his promotion felt more like a goodbye. Ask him what he really does all day after he kisses you and leaves for a job he doesn't have. Ask him how he planned on paying the mortgage you were 3 months behind on." Each question was a stone, and I hurled them at her, watching them strike and shatter the fragile bubble she lived in. Charlotte stood frozen, her hand coming up to her mouth. Her eyes were wide with a dawning, horrifying understanding. She stared at me, not in anger, but in sheer, unadulterated shock, as if I had just spoken to her in a foreign language that she was only now beginning to comprehend. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the sound of the rain against the window pane and the ragged, painful breath she was starting to take. Charlotte didn't say another word. She simply turned, her movements stiff and robotic, and walked out of my house, back into the rain. She didn't even retrieve her umbrella. I watched from the window as she got into her luxury SUV, the rain plastering her hair to her face. She sat there for a long moment, staring blankly ahead, before finally pulling away from the curb. The relief I had expected to feel did not come. In its place was a profound sense of dread. I had detonated the bomb, now I could only wait for the fallout. For 3 days, there was only silence. I called and texted, my messages shifting from anxious to apologetic to pleading, but she didn't respond. I called Ethan, but his phone went straight to voicemail. In my mind, I pictured the worst. A catastrophic fight, a shattered marriage, my sister alone in the ruins of her life that I had helped to tear down. The anger I had harbored for weeks had evaporated, leaving behind only a deep, aching sorrow for my sister and a heavy guilt for the brutal way I had delivered the truth. Then, on the 4th day, my phone rang. It was her. I answered with a trembling hand. Meg? Her voice was small, fragile, a ghost of its usual confident tone. Can you meet me? We met at a small anonymous coffee shop halfway between our two homes. When she walked in, she looked like a different person. She wore no makeup, her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she was dressed in jeans and a plain sweater. The vibrant, polished armor of Charlotte was gone. This was just my sister. She sat down and for a long moment just stared into her cup of coffee. He told me everything, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. After I left your house, I went home and I found the letters from the bank. He had hidden them in the back of his closet. When he came home, I was sitting on the bed with them in my lap, and the whole story just came pouring out. She looked up at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I was so angry at first, so humiliated. But then, I just saw how terrified he was, how broken. He wasn't a monster. He was just a man who was drowning and was too proud to admit he couldn't swim. She took a shaky breath. We've put the house on the market. We're lucky. The agent thinks it will sell quickly. We'll have enough to pay the bank, pay off the credit card debt, and pay you back. Charlotte, you don't have to worry about that right now, I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. It felt cold. Yes, we do, she insisted, her grip surprisingly firm. The money isn't the point, Megan. The point is what I did to you, what I made you carry. Her eyes locked onto mine. I am so sorry. I was so wrapped up in the performance, in what everyone thought of us, that I couldn't see anything else. I wasn't just blind to Ethan's struggles. I was blind to yours. You were hurting, and I was trying to get you to go shopping for a handbag. That's not a sister. And I'm so sorry. Tears I hadn't realized I was holding back began to slide down my cheeks. I'm sorry too, I whispered. I was so cruel. I said those things to hurt you, and I'm ashamed of that. No, she said, shaking her head. I needed to hear it. Maybe not like that, but I needed to wake up. We both did. In the weeks that followed, the immaculate facade of their life was dismantled, piece by piece. The for sale sign went up on the lawn of the perfect house. They sold one of the expensive cars. Ethan took a job in logistics at a company smaller than his last, for a salary that was a fraction of what he once made. It was humbling, difficult work. They were moving into a small rental apartment, the kind of place they would have pitied someone else for living in just a few months earlier. But through it all, something new was being built. I saw it one evening when I went to help them pack. The house was full of boxes, the grand rooms stripped of their designer furniture. But in the middle of the chaos, I saw Charlotte and Ethan talking in the kitchen. There were no fake smiles, no performances. They were just a man and a woman, facing a difficult reality together. Their conversation was quiet, but their hands were clasped on the table. They were a team again. A few months later, the house sold. The first thing they did was transfer $15,000 back into my savings account. The second was to invite me to their new, much smaller apartment for dinner. There was no jazz playlist, no crowd of admirers. It was just the three of us, eating pizza from a cardboard box on their floor, because the moving truck with their few remaining belongings was late. And for the first time in a very long time, we were all laughing. There were no secrets between us anymore, no illusions to maintain. All we had left was the truth, and it turned out the truth was a much stronger foundation to build a life on.